maybe we can get started. And welcome to this session 2.3. This session is about tourism and health in the Pamir region. My name is Bernard Musyck. I'm teaching economics at the UCA at the Korok campus. I have interests in local development and tourism, which explains also why I am here as the moderator. Today we have 3 papers, if everything goes well. 2 papers are from students at the UCA. And then we have a paper by Mrs. Shifo Kurbonbekova about health. And that would be very interesting because it will tie in very nicely with the other papers which are on the tourism. And one aspect of tourism can also be health tourism, of course, and we will discuss that, I'm sure. Welcome to everybody. Welcome to the speakers as well. I see that there's still one speaker who is missing. So I think that we should start with the presentation of, follow the agenda, and because Zaher Shah is not present, and Zaher Shah Sayedi, who is going to talk about the revenue determinants per available room in the Pamir region, is not with us yet. So I think that we then would move on to the next talk, which is by Aidai. For some reasons, and I think that's a mistake, I am being the author, I'm being listed there as the author of those papers. I am not, I'm just collaborating with my students. Otherwise, there would be a bit of a strange situation where I'm author of 2 papers in a session that I am moderating. That would be a bit of a funny situation. So I would invite Aidai Maksatbekova to join us and to, well done. Aidai, thank you very much for sharing your screen. And so Aidai is going to talk about the tourism opportunities in the Pamir region. And as I said before, Aidai is a student at the UCA. She's a senior student, and she will graduate this year. And she has been undertaking this research for quite a few months now, and shown a keen interest on what can be done in those Pamir mountains that are so wonderful. So Aidai, the floor is yours. You have 15-20 minutes to talk, and then after you finish your talk, we will proceed with a question and answer session, and I hope we'll have a lively discussion. Right, I see also that the slides
Thank you.
of the next speakers are there. So that means that's good news. That means the next speaker is there, and we will proceed after your talk. Okay, Aidai, please go ahead, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Professor Musyck. Am I audible?
Oh, yes, you are very audible.
Thank you. So, good afternoon, everyone. I think there is no need to introduce myself, as Mr. Bernard already did. And today I would like to share some insights of our ongoing paper that we have been working on under the supervision of Mr. Musyck. And our paper focuses on the development of mountain tourism in the Pamir region of Tajikistan. And as you probably might know, the region is well known for its Pamir mountain range that possesses enormous opportunities for mountain tourism development. So here you can see the overall flow of our presentation, throughout of which we will discuss the potential opportunities as well as challenges that are associated with the development of mountain tourism in the Pamir. So the Pamir Mountains are located within GBAO, Tajikistan, but the borders pass through the territories of Afghanistan, China, and Kyrgyzstan. And the region, the Pamir region, counts some of the highest peaks and glaciers of Central Asia and is renowned for the so-called Pamir Highway, which is the main supply road for the GBAU region. But it also serves as a major tourist attraction for foreign tourists. And the region possesses an enormous tourism potential, stretching much further than the Pamir Highway experience. But to this day, many of these activities remain underdeveloped and underdocumented. That's why our paper aims to contribute to the limited literature on mountain tourism in the Pamirs, the objective being to explore academically the expansion of tourism attractions beyond today's current state of play. And in doing so, the paper reviews various forms of tourism activities with a proven relevance to the region's geographical and cultural assets, offering some insights in the challenges and opportunities that lie ahead. So now let's proceed with the potential opportunities of mountain tourism in the Pamir. And the first one is the development of helicopter tourism in Sares Lake. Sares Lake is one of the most attractive places for tourists in GBAO, but it is also one of the hard to reach places in the region due to the location in the mountain range. And the common means of transportation to reach the lake is a car, but the unsafe roads create substantial challenges actually. And moreover, tourists can only drive until a certain point, and from there they have to walk up to 20 kilometers to reach Sares Lake, carrying all their luggage and needed equipment in hand. Tourists can reach the lake by helicopter, but the charters are not always available. Most of the functioning helicopters are owned by the state and are used for other purposes except tourism. Thus, we say that development of helicopter tourism could increase the number of potential tourists and as a result, contribute to the economic growth in the region. The second opportunity is related to the development of hot spring tourism in the region. GBAO is famous for its hot springs that are spread across the region. In total, there are 72 cold, warm, and thermal springs saturated with carbon, nitrogen, and other minerals in the region. And Bibi Fatima Zahra, Jilondi, Garm Chashma are only a few examples of healing hot springs in the region. And the region has served as a great source of attraction for domestic tourists who come from all around Tajikistan for health benefits, as well as for tourists from neighboring countries. Talking about the next opportunity, the immense biodiversity that prevails in the region creates additional tourism prospects. Among the many occasions is trophy hunting. So GBAO is a home for many endangered animals like Marco Polo sheep, snow leopard, ibex, markhor, and so on. And as a result, developing trophy hunting in the region can attract many tourists from abroad who are seeking adventures. However, we should understand that trophy hunting embodies controversiality since while it might contribute to animal and environmental preservation, it can also cause the extinction of endangered species. So in this section of our paper, we discuss how community-based trophy hunting can become a tool for wildlife preservation and its potential socioeconomic impacts in the GBAO. Next, the tourism sector actually plays a crucial role in achieving the goals of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, which includes gender equality and women's empowerment. And among many opportunities, tourism encourages women to start their entrepreneurial activities, leading to their economic empowerment. And such a pattern is also noticeable in GBAO, like some restaurants, cafes, hotels, and handicraft souvenir shops were opened by local women to host the tourists that visit the region. But it is important to note that the market for their tourism products is not well diversified. That's why diversifying tourism income activities can help to further boost women's entrepreneurship in GBAO. Next, so the region actually borders with three countries, namely China in the east, Kyrgyzstan in the north, and Afghanistan in the south. So its geographical position provides the region with many advantages for developing cross-border tourism. Cross-border tourism actually contributes to the economic development of the regions that are located near the borders. For instance, it creates job opportunities, boosts local economies, improves the standard of living of communities, and encourages more investment opportunities. And cross-border tourism also brings cultural benefits by augmenting cultural heritage and creating opportunities for cultural exchange between the visitors and locals. However, along with its advantages, cross-border tourism might cause substantial challenges as well. It may embrace the risk of rising living costs, including raised housing and land prices, shortage of goods, and many other things. Moving further, GBEO actually unites the representatives of different cultures, and such cultural diversity allows the region to promote cultural tourism, which includes cultural celebrations, festivals, art performances, poetry, folklore, pilgrimage, architecture, cuisine, and many other things that are part of broadly defined phenomena of culture. Next, one of the ways of promoting ecotourism is by building nature houses in the region. So because whenever we want to start like develop the tourism in this region, we do not want to harm the environment, right? So as the name suggests, nature houses are dwellings that are built using eco-friendly materials in the middle of nature. And such type of houses attracts many visitors who wish to enjoy the nature while also living in comfort. And as I said, while developing mountain tourism in the Pamir region, one of the goals is to not harm the environment, right? So thus building nature houses would serve as a tool for drawing tourist attention while preserving the mesmerizing nature in the region. And most of the existing tourist destinations in GBA currently do not have any proper accommodation. So as a result, building nature houses instead of typical hotels and hostels like near mountains, hot springs, and lakes can promote eco-friendly mountain tourism in the region. Proceeding to the next slide, extreme tourism, also referred as an adventure tourism, which is a type of tourism that is associated with a high level of adrenaline and adventure. So this type of tourism is much riskier relative to others, and the enormously high Pamir Mountains create favorable conditions for developing extreme tourism in the region. And of particular interest in this study are zip lining and bungee jumping. Moving further, so far mountains have been mostly seen as an endowment of drinking water, natural possessions, energy, and genetic variety. But among the many benefits that they provide, tourism opportunities are of particular interest in our study, and we want to talk about mountaineering tourism. So mountaineering tourism, by being a subset of mountain tourism, involves activities such as skiing, biking, hiking, and many others. And the notion of mountaineering as a recreational activity has come into being in the 1870s, like a few centuries ago, but nowadays mountaineering is widening in many parts of the world, right? And the availability of high peaks in the Pamir also creates an opportunity for organizing mountain tours. The region also possesses an opportunity for developing mountain bike tourism. And the cold and long winters in the region also allow tourists to have a unique winter mountain experience. Like they can engage in skating, skiing, and many other winter sports activities. Finally, not long ago, couch surfing was perceived as an alternative for backpacking or budget travel, but nowadays it is well known as a stylish way of traveling that provides travelers with unforgettable experiences. And this type of traveling is carried out through a website that unites all travelers of the world. And as we know, hospitality lies at the core of the Pamir culture. The Pamir traditions oblige to treat the guests with the highest respect. Therefore, the hospitality of the Pamir people encourages the development of couch surfing in the Pamir. Tourists can receive not only free accommodation, but also a unique experience living in traditional Pamir houses. In a similar way, all local businesses can also benefit from couch surfing by having bigger numbers of tourists who will use their services. So through promoting the Pamir culture, couch surfing also contributes to the development of mountain tourism in the region by attracting more tourists. And now, as the coin has two sides, there are some challenges as well in the region, which are associated with the development of mountain tourism. And the first one is the poor road infrastructure and transportation services in the Pamir that create substantial challenges for developing tourism in the region. And as one might assume, transportation is an important driving force for the tourism industry. And transportation and tourism have a symbiotic relationship, which means that one cannot occur without the other. The second challenge is associated with terrorism. Terrorism has a negative influence on the image of a tourist destination, and unfortunately, the country experienced an unpleasant case a few years ago where 4 foreign tourists were killed in possible terror attack. And the fact that the region borders with Afghanistan also creates additional challenges. And next, the ongoing pandemic, of course, has worsened the tourism sector around the world. And as a result of COVID-19, the number of tourists decreased sharply. And such patterns are also observable in GBAO. And consequently, many local tourism-oriented businesses faced huge problems, and some were shut down permanently. And finally, so all of the opportunities presented so far are bounded to the availability of resources, as we know, and the region lacks human, physical, and financial capital. So it is quite challenging to find foreign investors who could actually invest in this remote region. And it is also uncertain whether there will be a critical mass of tourists with an adequate purchasing power. We have to focus on these things because we have to identify the success factors of those opportunities, and we are bounded to this to the availability of human, physical, and financial capital in the region. So to conclude the presentation, so far we have explored the opportunities and challenges of mountain tourism in the Pamir region, but we want to emphasize that the further research is needed in order to fill in the knowledge gap about the region, because not so many articles were published about the region. So that's why we are planning to continue our research on this topic. And thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Aida, for this very comprehensive presentation. The floor is open for questions, comments, excuse me, from the, anybody wants to add something, ask a question. If nobody is coming forward, I will perhaps open the floor with some comments and questions. Aida is from Kyrgyzstan, and I wanted to ask Aida if there are perhaps lessons that can be learned from what is happening in your country, Aida. Because I am under the impression that the tourism services, the tourism product there is much more developed than in the Pamir region, Tajikistan side, I mean. I see, for example, that, well, that was pre-COVID, that the car rental business that, so where tourists, foreign tourists can rent those 4x4 cars to do the Pamir Highway that we were looking at. Most of these cars come from Kyrgyzstan, if I'm not mistaken. So I see also that there are some companies advertising mountaineering activities and tours and treks in Kyrgyzstan on social media. There seem to be more presence, at least from what I can judge from the marketing. Would you have any idea of, could you judge if there is the difference? Because, you know, you have also been living in Khorok and the Pamir region, and maybe you are in a good place to compare. What would you?
Sure. Thank you for your question. So I would agree, like if you're comparing in relative terms, I would agree that tourism sector in Kyrgyzstan is more developed in comparison to Tajikistan, but we have to also include the factors. So I would say that the tourism sector in urban areas, like in big cities or in the like major tourist destinations are developed well, but if you look at the cases of rural areas, for example, Naryn region where I live, then still we have problems because we do not have like adequate services that we can provide to the tourists, like whether it comes to mountaineering, like organizing mountain tours. The most, you know, the main focus here in Kyrgyzstan are, I would say, about on the Usyk Lake, which is the major, like the major tourist destination. So that's why government or other private organizations are kind of trying to focus more on that sector. And of course, because of this COVID, yes, the country is also experiencing problems in the tourism sector, but there are also some initiatives going on. For instance, yesterday in Naryn, we had a tourism forum, so which aimed to actually develop, to help the region, which is like remote, which is considered as a remote and mountainous region, Naryn, to develop that tourism sector in here. So I think both the government and other organizations are trying to actually develop and help the tourism sector during this crisis.
Okay, well, thank you so much. Thank you also to Nicholas for pointing out that other participants have to be unmuted. So Nicholas, you've been unmuted. So I hope that you will, you know, come up with a question or a comment. Would like to hear from you.
Yes, now I can talk. I'm actually from another mountainous country that is Switzerland, and I have little experience with Tajikistan, but much experience with Kyrgyzstan. And you mentioned Issyk-Kul, and I hope a similar development will not take place in Tajikistan, because Issyk-Kul is going in the wrong direction. But my real question is, what are the actual numbers of tourists in the Pamir before and after the pandemic? What is the potential of increasing it?
Sure, thank you for your question, actually. So it was quite difficult to actually search for the exact number of tourists in Pamir, because we couldn't find any organization where we can take that information from, right? Like we can see overall the number of tourists that are visiting Tajikistan, but like depending, like they are not by region. So I think we should learn more about that.
But excuse me, you need a special permit for Gorny Badakhshan. So this should narrow down the numbers.
Exactly. There are ways how we can like figure out the number of tourists, and we are working on that, because as we said, this is an ongoing project. So first it was just a brainstorming, so we came up with the opportunities, and now we are working on the statistics further.
Yeah, so perhaps I can add something here. It's true that it would be very good data, the data for the permits. It remains to be seen if this data can be obtained. Obtaining data in Tajikistan is a very difficult process. I haven't approached the relevant authorities, or neither did Aida at this point, but it's generally very difficult to obtain data. On the other hand, there is a student, a senior student, who is going to work this year on the effect of the pandemic on tourism, especially the hospitality business. So we will have an idea there. But Nicolas, I can definitely tell you that, as was mentioned in the presentation of Aida, it's a kiss of death. There were no tourists. I mean, they were perhaps replaced by some domestic tourists, but foreigners did not visit Khorok and the neighboring Pamir region.
Well, that's really shocking. Not at all.
Not at all. No, no. That has been a disaster, because you know, for a long time the country was closed as well. Then we should know also that the pandemic was you know, because the levels of vaccinations were much lower, so tourists were also afraid of coming. So you know, there has been a total collapse of the sector during the crisis. I don't know, Aida, if you want to add something, but
yeah, I would say the same. And also, like, the pandemic is one problem, but also getting those permits for, like, obtaining visas for Tajikistan is difficult, which also affects the number of visitors that come to Tajikistan, especially after the pandemic. The situation actually has worsened. So maybe that's why it can also affect.
And then, of course, we have this the situation in Afghanistan. You know, don't forget that the border of the Pamir region borders Afghanistan for hundreds of kilometers. And so we have huge problems there, at least in terms of the perception of people in Europe. You know, you're going to be experiencing mountains in the company of the Taliban, which are on the other side of the river, basically. So this is a very daunting prospect. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think we can also add the border conflict with Kyrgyzstan that takes place during summertime. So there were also some tourists from Kyrgyzstan, because, as you know, in the Pamir region, there is a Murgab district where a majority of people are of Kyrgyz ethnicity, right? So they were kind of traveling, like they were visiting Tajikistan most of the times, but the government of Kyrgyzstan closed the border with Tajikistan after that case, and that's why it can also, like, the number of tourists from Kyrgyzstan also decreased. I think there were none of them, yeah, there this year after the summer time.
May I take the opportunity, Nicolas, to ask you, I would be very interested to learn a bit more about what mistakes were made in the LiK district there in Kyrgyzstan you were mentioning, and what lessons can we learn?
When you go to Chorpan Ata, it is a overrun place with little attention to nature preservation. It tries to attract rich Kazakhs and Russians. And the south shore is still in a fairly good condition, but the north shore, I think, is in a very dangerous situation right now.
So you're referring to overexploitation, issues linked to overexploitation.
Yes. It will attract people who like luxury and comfort and gambling and God knows what, but the nature-loving people will stay away.
Mm-hmm. 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 Yeah, but that's always a big threat on tourism projects. You can see this everywhere. Yeah, this is a dimension that perhaps we should also take into account. I wanted to ask, perhaps if, of course, I would like to other people to join in. If you have any question. Don't see any hands that are raised at this stage. If nobody has a question, perhaps I have another one. How could we, so Aidai, you talked about collecting some data, of course, some numbers about visitors that is necessary. How else would you see carrying out this project further? What would you like to know? How could you enrich this paper, this research project? And what kind of information would you like to collect?
Sure. So mostly we would focus on the qualitative, like on collecting qualitative data, because we want to interview people who are actually related to the fields that I have mentioned during the presentation. So recently there are different organizations in GBO that are working on developing the tourism in that sector. So they have also their own data. So we can collaborate with those organizations as well as conducting our own interviews. Yeah, and later we can see whether there is a match between our data and the data provided by those organizations.
Sure, that would be very interesting. Another issue that I was thinking of is to see what kind of new development could be sourced more locally. In fact, I thought that was very interesting, this mentioning of the nature houses. Do I understand that these nature houses are not imported products, but can be houses that can be built with locally sourced material and know-how? Because the sustainability of any project could be very, very relevant here. And in fact, when we look at the various sectors that have been presented, they have different levels of local content, if I may say so. You know, one extreme being visiting the lake by helicopter. That would mean, I guess, importing an helicopter and the team around the helicopter, that's the engineers, importing skilled pilots, you know, having the maintenance, having these parts. I mean, these are very costly experiences. And then on the other hand, you have the other side, which is the couch surfing, you know, based on the local mentality of hospitality. So how do you see this issue? This could be an interesting way to also look at what can be done in the region.
Sure. You correctly noted that there are some like colossal projects or opportunities here that require substantial financial resources, right? And as I mentioned about the challenges, like helicopter services also refers to one of them, but also there are possibilities. So we can rank these opportunities like a short-term and long-term opportunities, like the things that can be done in a short period of time and in the longer perspective. For a short period of time, we can do this eco-tourism, like building nature houses, because Pamir is well known for its rocks, and they are used everywhere in constructing buildings. Even our university, right, uses such materials. And so for those kind of opportunities, we can use all the resources that are available in the region, and there are a lot of them actually. But for the like bigger ones, of course, there has to be an intervention from the side of government or collaboration with the organizations that exist there, because we have to look for the investors, right, who would like to invest in that field. And we should also be critical about them, whether there will be like customers, like whether tourists will come and use that services, like will they have that adequate purchasing power? So we have to analyze that things as well.
Yeah, because the customers that we witness today in the Pamir region are not big spenders, except for perhaps those who would purchase these licenses to hunt. Generally speaking, we're talking about adventurers, bikers, people, nature-loving people, coming there with motorcycles, with rented cars, by foot. So people satisfied with basic hospitality services. So these people, the type of tourists that we have at the moment in the Pamir region are not big spenders, and so it would be also interesting to make a typology, to get a feel of who could come. Of course, it's a matter of supply and demand. You know, if you supply some higher quality services, then perhaps you will create the demand, and then you will bring people in who are willing to spend more. But that's another interesting issue that needs to be researched. Okay, Nash, would you like to perhaps voice your comment? That would be nice at this stage. I see that you are making a comment in the chat box.
Sure, about the Sares Lake.
Okay, all right, that's a question for you. Okay.
Yeah, so as I said, this Sares Lake is located on the mountain, right on the top of the mountain range, right? So it's quite fragile for the tourists that are visiting because they need the medical support always. That's why they have to carry a lot of equipment with them while visiting this Sares Lake. And also there are some environmental issues related to this Sares Lake as well, because there are some natural disasters that usually take place, like mud flows, right? And you also know that the Pamir region is very, there are a lot of earthquakes happening because of the location of the mountains and their place, right? So I would consider Sares Lake quite a fragile place that has big problems as well. But also it also serves as a great attraction for tourists because they are seeking for that adventure, for that risky traveling.
It's perhaps also the case that, thanks God, because it's difficult to reach, the lake is not suffering from the same fate as the other lake that Nicholas was talking about. There are so few people that could reach it because, after all, you have to 20 kilometers.
The main problem in Musyck is that it is very polluted because it's so crowded, right? But Sares Lake, as I said, it's super difficult to reach, like physically, but it's also difficult to obtain all the permits because even though you have that Pamir permit, you still have to get another permit in order to visit this lake.
That's right. Yeah. Okay, well, if there are no other comments or questions, I would like to thank Aidai for her presentation, and we're going to look forward to a continuation of this project, and perhaps on the occasion of this conference next year, we'll be able to present more data, Aidai, and a more complete pictures of the situation.
Thank you.
So thank you very much for your contribution. I see that unfortunately our second speaker is absent. Yes, I'm just checking the names. I do not see. So that would mean that I would invite Shifo Kurbonbekova to join us. Shifo is there with us. We have seen we had a small glimpse of your slides earlier on, and I'm glad to see that this topic of ethnomedicine in the Pamir, it actually links really nicely with this idea of tourism that is sustainable and based on assets of the region. So I'm really looking forward to learn more about what ethnomedicine in the Pamir can present and offer as opportunities. And yes, I would invite you to proceed, and the floor is yours. Thank you very much for your contribution.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you very well. And sorry, I didn't introduce you. Perhaps you can introduce yourself,
okay,
because I don't know you, so it would be nice if you can say something about yourself before starting. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm very glad to participate in this conference. I'm Shifo Kurbonbekova from the Institute of Botany, Plant Physiology and Genetics of National Academy of Science of Tajikistan. And I'm going to talk about the ethnomedicine in the Pamirs, therapeutic agents for bone diseases. Bone diseases are one of the
Shifo, can I ask you if, excuse me, can I ask you if you perhaps could speak closer to your microphone, because the sound is not very good.
Okay. Bone diseases are one of the serious and leading health issue of modern society. Rheumatoid arthritis, arthrosis, bone fracturing, sprain, osteoporosis, and many other disorders of musculoskeletal system cause problem for human health today. Many degenerative processes, the inflammation also, microbial action, and destruction of the cartilages or bone tissues lead to bone disease. This problem accelerates when organisms marginally start to decline. The organism becomes sensitive even to simple inflammation, and microbial activities, which then causes big health problem for our bones and joints and muscle as well. So malabsorption of minerals, which leads to porosity, weakening, and degeneration of bone tissue, due to which they become prone to fracture, is another cause of bone disease. Therefore, in the midlife, the intake of the nutrient and the vital ingredient which make up the constituent of medicinal plants help to support the bone tissues and their normal functioning. So another problem related to bone, it is bone fracturing, which is due to injuries or high forces or accident that lead to fracture of bone, and it is also a medical condition that harm our health. There is for both scientific as well as the traditional methods should find therapeutic agents to solve the problem. And today, many synthetic therapeutic drugs have been designed to treat the above-mentioned disease. However, there are a huge number of alternative source and natural remedies like medicinal plants, which play a vital role in the therapy of different bone disease because they contain the bioactive compounds and the therapeutic agents which help to reduce the inflammation process or pain-killing ability or just antioxidant ability, and moreover, with these therapeutic agents, so we can produce drugs in the pharmacy and use them for the treatment of bone disease. So the research is pointed to identify medicinal plants of the Pamirs available in the Pamirs, which can be used as a source of therapeutic agents for bone disease and drug design. And as we know that Pamir, it is the mountainous part of Central Asia, one of the mountainous territory of Central Asia, which is located in the north part of the Himalayas and in the south part of Central Asia. And it covers the territory of the Pamir, the territory of Tajikistan, Afghanistan, Pakistan, and some parts of the China. And it is also located in the junction of another big mountain ranges like Hindu Kush, Karakoram, Kanglan, and Tian Shan. And the highest peak, sorry, the highest peak of Pamir Mountains, it is 7,495 meters above sea level. So this specific climatic condition and the relief made situation for the growth of different valuable medicinal plants, and they are concentrated in the altitude, distributed from the altitude of 1,000 to 4,500 meters above sea level. So a huge potential of medicinal plants can be seen in Pamirs, and there are more than 600 of medicinal plants and therapeutic agents grow in the Pamirs, and from this amount, more than 20 species widely used in medicine for the treatment of bone disease, and to which belongs the Chimarum, the Chinapodium rubrum, the Equisitum arvensis, Artemisia species, and Nepeta species, as well the Salix and Berberis, and also some species of Rhodiola. And let's talk about some of them in detail. For example, Nepeta glutinosa. This is an aromatic plant which belongs to the Lamiaceae family, and it distributed from the altitude of 3,000 to 4,000 and more meters above sea level, and it mainly can be seen in between, grow in between the stones. So the plant distributed not only in the Tajikistan part of the Pamir, but in the as it is high mountainous plant, so it can be seen in the Pamir Alai, in the Western Himalaya, in Tibet, in the Xinjiang of China, and also in the Kashmir of India. So from the very distant past, the plant was used for the treatment of bone disease, such as the rheumatoid conditions, the bone fracturing, joint distortion, and some other musculoskeletal disease was used with therapeutic agents produced from the Nepeta glutinosa. So for the treatment, local people of the Pamir use the iron quartz, mainly the leaves and stem, and main focus has been done on the parts that are located on the very bottom of this stem, because they accumulate a huge number of essential oil, and that is for this essential oil has anti-inflammatory as well as antimicrobial effect, whereas for people use mainly this part of the plant. According to some sources, Nepeta glutinosa also contain the phenylpropanoids in the amount of 17 to 18 micrograms per gram. And the main compound of this component is acylic acid and caffeol catronic acid, and also caffeol phenic acid. So as for the flavin glycosid groups, here dominate the limonene and scolimoside. So, and the plant use in different types of preparation people produce from this plant. It is mainly the infusion, decoction, ointment, poultice. And so as we see that a significant differences is observed between the type of preparation, and their linear progression effect on the reducing the inflammatory disease during the rheumatoid condition. And we see that the poultice is dominate over the ointment and infusion, that in a very short period of time, usage of the poultice can reduce inflammation process during the bone disease. The plant also used for the back and hip joint pains, and as we know that back pain appears due to the degenerative processes of the disc of joint during the aging period, or because of the inflammation or accumulation of salt in joints, and it affects the muscle and nerves, which then lead to another musculoskeletal system disease. So local people use Nepeta glutinosa buds for the back pain and hips pain, and in very low dose, because if the therapeutic agent is increased in the preparation, so it can harm to the organism. It can bring to the hardening and cementing of the tissues, bone tissues, which is harmful especially for women, for pregnant women, because it may problem for delivery process. The bone, the tissue become very hard. It's cemented, and it is so negative effect of the plant. So as we know that the plant has both positive and negative effect, there is for further therapeutical, pharmacological, and phytochemical studies need to be done in order to identify the real potential of the plant for the treatment of bone disease. So another plant that grow in the Pamirs, it is berberis, and many species of this genus can be seen in Pamir, and mainly the roots of the plant used for the treatment of bone disease. The root contain secondary metabolites like alkaloids, berberin and berberine, which are useful for pain-killing effect. They have pain-killing effect, and besides that, it mainly used for bone sealing. During the bone fracture, it is very helpful, mainly the rib bones. So treat with this plant, and it can be used alone or in combination with the Maksatbekova, or in combination with the mumio, which is called mum, the Persian word mum, or the shilingi. So the last is rich in micro elements like calcium, silica, which are also very helpful for the feeding and nutrition of bone tissues. So some medicinal plants of the Pamirs has anti-inflammatory and pain-killing effect only. They do not use for the bone fracture treatment, but they reduce the inflammation or reduce the pain, which appear during the osteoporosis, arthrosis, and so arthritis and arthrosis disease. So, and the survey has shown that such plants like willow, fumarum, chinopodium from some species of Artemisia, and some species of Musyck, as well as the rhodiola species. So use has anti-inflammatory effect, and they contain, for example, willow contain the silica, which give it the ability to reduce pain, analgesic effect. And the rest of the plants mainly used for reducing of the inflammation process. So you see here that the inflammation in the joints of the hands, so they can help to reduce them. So another disease that can cause harm for human, it is osteoporosis, and we know that osteoporosis, it is when the osteoblastic activity is very far from equilibrium, and in this condition, so it brings to the porosity and porosity of the bone tissues, or decreasing the mass of the bone tissues and weakening of bone, which make them prone to fracture. So, and it mainly observed in the mid-age period, especially in women's after menopause period, post-menopause period. So in here, when the estrogen level, hormone estrogen decrease, and it affects the reabsorption of calcium ion back into the bone, and it can lead to such condition like osteoporosis, and the porosity of bone tissue increase significantly. But there exist many natural remedies which contain, for example, silica, and silica play a significant role in reabsorption of calcium ion back to the tissues. So they can use For example, Equisetum arvensis has such kind of elements, and it's mainly used for the treatment of osteoporosis. Moreover, the plant is rich in the flavonoids such as apigenin, quercetin, and camphorol, as well as it contains the ursotic acid and aromatic acid, which are also positively impact on osteoporosis. So, and the results has shown that most common plants of the Pamirs that are used for the treatment of bone disease, it is 23% of the population mainly used in Ethnomedicine, both for the inflammation, pain killing, and bone sealing processes. And 18% it is varied species also has wide spread effect on the different type of bone disease. Then 14% horse tail or Equisetum arvensis used for the treatment of bone disease and delphinum areophyllum, it is 11%. The rest of the plants, according to the ethnobotanical survey, so have 10% of use as therapeutic agent for bone disease. So the plants mainly used for the therapy of rheumatoid conditions, bone fracture, and osteoporosis. And to conclude, we want to say that the ethnobotanical and medical anthropological, as well as some experimental studies, have shown that the value of medicinal plants of the Pamir in traditional medicine for the treatment of the disease related to the musculoskeletal system. They has many plants used for the treatment of this kind of disease. And however, they mainly use in traditional medicine, and more studies, both phytochemical studies as well as pharmacological studies, preclinical and clinical studies need to be done in order to identify the real potential of these plants as a therapeutic agent for bone and general musculoskeletal disease. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Shifo, for this interesting presentation. I didn't know that the Pamir region had these treasures as well. Mm-hmm. So we are going to see and ask for comments and questions. Who would like to intervene at this stage?
Can I start, Bernard?
Of course, you're very welcome.
Shifo, some of the plants that you mentioned are rather common, like Chenopodium rubrum and Berberis and Salix. Which of the plants you mentioned you would consider a treasure of the Pamir region, which are not available in many other places?
It is Nepeta glutinosa. Nepeta glutinosa mainly can be seen in the high altitude, and it is so the distribution place of Nepeta glutinosa was shown here. So it can be seen in the mountainous part of the central territory of Central Asia mainly. And also Rhodiola Pamira alaica and Rhodiola iterodontus. So these are mainly Pamirs.
Since Nepeta glutinosa also grows in China, as you mentioned, is it used in traditional Chinese medicine?
There is very less information about use of Nepeta glutinosa in other traditional medicine, other peoples. So in Tajikistan, in the Pamirs mainly, it widely used, but literature data about the use of this plant in other people's traditional medicine are very less.
Yeah, thank you, Nicholas. Perhaps I'm I'm an economist, and I'm interested in of course the business side of this.
Mhm.
Do you think, Shifo, that some of these plants, as you discussed with Nicolas, would be specific to the Pamirs, that in some ways could be exploited, and what has been done in this field so far, to your knowledge?
So some before exporting the plants, there is need to study the pharmacological features of the plants, and so when, for example, we understand that they are not harmful, the negative effect is less in compared to the positive effect, then so we can use them for drug design, and in this case, after that, it can be so exploited as products for
Unfortunately, the internet connection is not very good. I did not exactly get your answer, but Nash is asking, how about seabuck thorn? And I have read that even Genghis Khan's armies used it.
So in the Pamir, seaback do not use for bone disease. It is so mainly those plants, like these 20 plants that I mentioned here, they use widely for treatment of bone disease, but seaback maybe in other parts, so traditional medicine or other people they use for treatment of the bone disease.
So do I understand that these plants are useful to inform the pharmaceutical industry about the active components, rather than being the source of revenue, that there could be a small industry that could collect these plants and perhaps process them? What do you actually sell here? The plant or the secret of the plant?
So here they rarely has effects on the treatment of bone disease, and they need to be investigated, and so then used for drug design.
Okay, so further investigation is necessary.
Because they mainly use in traditional medicine, and some of them has a negative effect as well. So they need to be investigated fully and identified.
Okay. This kind of investigations can be done at locally, or do they require large research infrastructure and capital intensive methods? Who can do this kind of work?
So at the Institute of Botany, we can do this investigation also in collaboration with the pharmaceutical company. We are already start some investigation related to these plants, mainly for treatment of bone disease, and so after getting the results, we can say that they can use this source of medicine.
Okay, that's very interesting. So I wanted to also ask, if there's no other question, how do you carry out, this anthropological survey? Is there, specific population that you're interviewing?
Mainly the interviewing and use of the questionnaire, it is the basis of anthropological survey.
The use of what, sorry?
Anthropological survey.
Yeah. And then I had a question regarding the use of these traditional medicine and plants. Is this growing, or on the other hand, do locals increasingly use these remedies, or is this something that is gradually getting lost to the benefit of, shall I say, commercialized, industrialized medicines?
No, so they are growing, yes, and we are planning to commercialize them after investigation, of course.
Right. So,
yeah, they are distributed in the Pamir, very wide territories, and also we grow them, cultivate them for
right.
commercializing.
Oh, not only, so these plants are not only to be found in the wild, but could actually be cultivated as well. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, we are studying them, adaptation ability to the lowland. That how can they also adapt to this condition, because they are in very high elevation, and so we need to identify that their adaptation to the lowland, and then we compare the component that between the plants that grow in wild and those plants that were cultivated.
Mm-hmm.
So the increase or decrease of therapeutic agents within the plants.
Okay, very clear. Yes. Okay, so there is a potential for growing this kind of small industry in the long term, but it's interesting to see that this hinges on people like you and your institute providing the background information that would justify this new activity.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's great. Thank you very much. I think if there are no further questions,
thank you.
Thank you very much, Shifo, for this very interesting contribution. I'm just checking if our missing speaker may have turned out. No, he's not with us today. So I don't know what happened. Well, then let me thank everybody for joining this session, and wishing you a good afternoon.